Well, I want to talk about a young girl at the time who I'm going to start this story at Los Angeles International Airport. So she was coming from New York to Los Angeles to work on her first movie and to do her first large nightclub act. And so she had never been to California before. She didn't know anybody or anything about California. So she was kind of wide open to learning what she could. But I've got some stuff here. Let's see. She was born April 24th, 1942, an American singer and actress with a career spanning over 6 decades. She achieved success in multiple fields of entertainment and is among the few performers awarded an Emmy, a Grammy, Oscar, and a Tony. EGOT, EGOT. And she had made a lot of appearances in New York and got signed with Columbia Records, and she had produced her first album, and she won a great deal of awards for that too. So she had a lot of notoriety in the music business, and then subsequently movies and television and everything that you can do. So her debut album came out in 1963, and that was the year when I met this young lady. And it turns out that I take a lot of pride in saying that I am the first Californian that she ever met. She never met anybody that lived in California, that worked in California in the entertainment business. So then I have to bring in a Columbia Records employee, and he went to the airport to pick this lady up. His name was, he was from New York, and his name is Rudy Butterfield. So I was running several radio stations in California, probably the largest number of independently owned stations in California at the time that belonged to Howard Tullis and John Hearn. So I was a pretty important guy in the music business. Excuse me. And I was in my office at 6290 Sunset Boulevard. That became a music building. It opened it kind of opened in 1962, but it wasn't completely finished inside. But it started letting tenants in, including Howard Tullis, an advertising agency, and my office as the director of operations for all of our stations. And so we're operating out of there. So because of that, Butterfield's job was to take this young lady around and introduce her to all the important people in the music business, all the people in the radio stations, anybody that had anything with recorded music. It was his job to go ahead and make sure that she gets exposed to all the venues he could, since she had never been to California. So why was she in California? Well, she was there to work on her first movie, to get coverage for her first album, and to make her debut at a very fancy club in Los Angeles at the Ambassador Hotel. The room was called the Coconut Grove, and they had some of the biggest parties ever. And it just wasn't anybody that could go in. It was an invite only. And I also was invited to that show that night. So let's see. I guess I can start telling you. I can tell you who she is. You probably already know. Barbara Streisand. She had never been to California, no experience whatsoever. And so she wound up at my office as the first stop on their adventures in California. And then after they were done in my office, right kitty corner across the street from my office was Wallach's Music City. It was the most famous record store in the world, and it was owned by Clive Wallace, I think, I can't remember, Wallach's. And it was the first place you could go in and in a little booth and get some sample records and sit in there and play them for yourself with earphones and listen to it. But had a huge clientele, and anybody in the music business always stopped in at Wallach's Music City. So that was another reason for Rudy to take her there. So it's kitty corner from my office. And when they left there, they came back across the street, across Vine Street, and went up about 3/4 of a block and had their lunch at a very well-known place called the Hollywood Brown Derby. It's gone now, but at that time, it was said that there were more movie and music contracts and such related venues assigned at the tables over lunch at the Brown Derby. And it was really neat because it had the entire wall, every single side of the building inside whatsoever had characters on little frames about, I'd say they're about 10 by 12 or something like that on canvas and mounted on the wall. It's kind of interesting because that was before the days of cell phones or anything. So what a lot of people did is they'd call the Brown Derby and have themselves paged. And so they would announce it over the PA system that you had a phone call waiting. And everybody did that just so they have their name sent out in the Brown Derby with all those important people there. Just a little self-promotion. I'm not saying whether I did that or not. Yeah, I'm saying I did. And what they would do is had a mile-long cord on the telephone. And so normally if you frequented the place, you had your favorite booth, and they'd set you in your favorite booth and make sure they'd save it for you if they knew you were coming. And they'd bring the phone over to your table, and then you can conduct your phone call at the table. And when you're done, they take it to whoever else was waiting to use it. And just an aside for that, the Brown Derby, the chef at the Brown Derby created a salad that is sold probably in almost every restaurant in the world today. And it's called Cobb salad, COBB. And I made it famous by people going there and having it. And then when they go elsewhere, they'd ask for a Cobb salad. And they said, well, I don't know what that is. And so they all found out soon enough. And they're still serving all over the world Cobb salad that was created in the Brown Derby. Now, I guess they went to her hotel so she could change and rest and whatever. And so later that evening, it was an invitation only presentation at the Ambassador Hotel in Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. And it had a showroom in it that was really a fancy one, and it had the whole room was filled with palm trees, and it was called the Coconut Grove. Very famous. And eventually the hotel got sold and torn down, and and the Coconut Grove and Anthony all went by the wayside. I remember going to that Coconut Grove another time. I was invited to Jimmy Durante's 50-year celebration anniversary in showbiz at the Coconut Grove. So it was a pretty hot spot. So anyway, Barbara Streisand was starting her run there while she was preparing for her first major movie, Funny Girl. And so we were all invited, all the important music people in the business were invited to that show, and that's where I met her again, and I was visiting with her, and she was also palling with Natalie Wood. So Natalie Wood, I met a lot. I met a lot of movie stars and other people in all my years in Hollywood. And I have to tell you, no woman I ever met in my life caused my knees to start to buckle. She's just a tiny little thing, but, just built beautifully, beautiful hair, beautiful eyes. I mean, she reached out her hand to say hello to me and say, pleased to meet you. And I looked at her and I had all I could do to stand up. That's something. So my wife knows this. So she finally got me. But Barbara went on, and her first album, that self-titled Barbara Streisand, 1963, won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. She topped the U.S. Billboard 200 chart with 11 albums, a record for a woman. So she starred in the critically acclaimed Funny Girl, which was the movie that she went there to make. It took a couple of years for it to finally get out and to be in distribution. And with the release of Yentl, 1983, she became the first woman to write, produce, direct, and star in a major studio film. It won an Oscar for Best Original Score, Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture, Musical, Golden Globe Award for Best Director. So anyway, that's the young lady, unknown to anybody in California. It came, and I'm flattered to have come to my office and be the first Californian for her to meet. I like that.